Hi, I'm Dr. Eric Cobb of Z Health Performance Solutions, and today I want to talk to you about probably one of the biggest myths in the fitness industry about symmetry and how important it is for us to work on it all the time and achieve it. Now, if you've never heard of Z Health, we are an education company, and our whole focus, honestly, is on taking emerging neuroscience and helping improve people's lives with it by making training more effective, making training more fun, making exercise more efficient. So that's what we do. And one of the things that I found really interesting over the last decade really is that as we learn more and more about how the body functions, particularly how the nervous system functions, we need to take that information and inform exercise with it. I work with tons of exercise professionals. We have a big certification program. And what I want to share with you today is a kind of an evolution of a program I shared in Denmark earlier this year at what's called the Inspire Convention. And at that convention, I did a talk on I called it barbells versus dumbbells, and why does it matter? So kind of evolving it for you guys today, I'm just calling it unilateral versus bilateral training. Because if you go into any gym anywhere in the world, what you'll typically see are people that are emphasizing symmetry, trying to get the same number of reps out of each arm, utilizing barbells a lot. As we see the evolution of fitness, we're seeing more and more barbell work being done kind of across the board by athletes, by people that are just trying to look better. We see Olympic lifting. We see all kinds of stuff. And I want to put all this in context because it's super important to me that you not hear this negatively, because all I'm going to ask you to do is have an open mind, because we're going to do a little personal science experimentation today. But understand that I love all forms of training. I love barbells, I love dumbbells, kettlebells, club bells, whatever you want to use. The big thing that I want us to understand is that there are ramifications to exercise. There are ramifications to the exercise choices that we make. And the fact is that everyone in the fitness industry is actually practicing neuroscience, whether they know it or not. And so we, again, have spent the last, actually over a decade at this point, developing an educational curriculum that says, hey, here's how the brain functions in relationship to movement, and here's why sometimes the exercise choices that we make are actually breaking bodies, not improving bodies. And that's all that we're going to try and figure out today. I'm going to go through a quick protocol for you, but first we have to do a little science so it makes sense. So I like to start off this talk with this particular slide. This is from the American Academy of Sports Medicine. 42% of people that are exercising hurt themselves every year. Now, that's kind of across the board, and we can look at a lot of different reasons that may occur. But whenever you go into any gym setting, if you look at the attrition rate of most people seeing a personal trainer, it's really high. It's actually way higher than most of us would recognize if we looked at kind of the global statistics. And whenever I see people that are getting hurt from exercise, I wonder why, all right? I've spent my entire life trying to figure this kind of stuff out. And again, with the emerging neuroscience that we're looking at, one of the things that's become very clear is that we have to be very concise in our thinking about what exercise actually does to the human body. So if you look at, again, exercise research, one of the things that's becoming really popular is a classification system that runs this way. We have people that are super responders to exercise, we have people that are normo responders to exercise, and we have people that are non-responders to exercise. And this is kind of how the statistics shake out in most of the studies where they take groups of people and they give them all the same training program. All right, and that's the key word here. They give them all the same training program. One of the most famous studies was done a number of years ago, and it started in Finland. They took 272 people, or 277, and put them through a 17-week combined strength and cardio training program. So basically, they took a bunch of people and put them into a gym setting, in essence, and had them train. And they did pre- and post-exercise testing. They did strength testing, they did VO2 max testing, etc. And their numbers broke out very similarly to what we were just looking at. You had the top group, which was about 17%, that were super responders. And they had an amazing, amazing response to exercise. Like for 17 weeks of training, maybe 48, 49% improvement, which is awesome. We'd all like to be that. And then we had the normal responders, normo, about 0.8 to 1% improvement per week. Now, that's not terrible, but again, in my mind, if I'm trying to be the best trainer that I can be, if I'm trying to be the best healthcare professional I can be, having a conversation with a client that says, hey, my specialty is making you 0.8% better per week, that's not super exciting to me. I'd like to give people a better opportunity than that. But that was a lot of them. That was about 68% or so. The most important group, though, in my mind, because it started to do a lot of stuff in the science world, is the bottom 20%, and they were called the non-responders. Now, in that group, what they found was that after 17 weeks of training, their post-testing showed not an improvement, but actually a decrease in performance of roughly 8%. So negative 8% improvement after 17 weeks of training. Now, that's actually a very hard program to sell, I think, because I certainly wouldn't want to pay for it. And, when we look at people in a gym setting, we actually see those people. If you've been in this industry for any period of time, you see people that actually are trying hard. They're training, but they're not progressing. And in fact, very often they're getting worse. The people that run constantly and they get heavier and heavier. People that are strength training and they don't ever seem to be able to crest over a plateau. So there's a lot of mythology that is involved in all of this that I'm going to try and talk a little bit about. But right now, I just want you to again think about that. I actually took a different strength training study. I laid it out here. Now, the way that I laid this out was just looking at the percent change or response based on super responders, normo, and non, and I gave them all kind of a starting bench press of 200 pounds. So that's not actually how it works in the real study, but this is just an example. 16 weeks, 48 hours of training, okay? So 3 hours a week. So for a 48-hour investment, the super responders, massive improvement. 200-pound bench press up to a 316, that's a lot of improvement. Normal responders, they go from a 200-pound bench press to a 234. Non-responders, 200-pound start, 16 weeks later, 184 is their max. Now, why does that happen, right? That's actually been one of my big questions. Why? Why do we have people that are now being labeled as genetic non-responders to exercise? And I think one of the big things that's missing around the world is an understanding that there are ramifications to exercise choice. One of the things I say in our classes all the time is exercise is not so simple that you can't screw it up. You can choose the wrong exercise. You can do it the wrong way. And that has deeper ramifications for the human body, probably than we've ever realized, especially as we get into the neuroscience around all this stuff. So the thing that I want you to start to think about is exercise can very easily be classified, or at least thought about the same way as a drug. If you see a physician who says, you know what, you have a particular disease, you know that the doctor's job, if you don't require surgery, usually is to come up with some kind of medication that you need. Now, if you have diabetes and he gives you a prescription for cancer, well, first of all, you've gotten the wrong drug, so you wouldn't expect a great response. But then the other issue in all that is if he gives you the right drug, but he gives it to you in such a minuscule dose that your body doesn't even notice it, you're not going to get a benefit. And ultimately, we also know that if you give the right drug to someone but give it in a massive overdose, there's a likely possibility of serious side effects or even death occurring. So in medicine, one of the concepts that they talk a lot about is what's called the MED, which is the minimal effective dose. That means we want to find the right drug and give it at the right dose to create the result and no more. And exercise really is designed, in my opinion, to work that same way, particularly when we look at the neuroscience around it. So, as I said, in our training programs, we spend a lot of time trying to help people understand that there are ways, practical, easy ways to assess, am I giving the right exercise? Am I giving it in the right dose? And one of the first things to look at in this perspective is the right exercise is very often not a bilateral movement. Very often the best exercise is a unilateral movement. And there are some very specific reasons neurologically around that. And that's what I want to kind of get into with you. So the question that I get a lot is, does this really matter? Does it matter if I do bilateral versus unilateral? The answer is yes. So let's take a look at brains real fast. Brains need a couple of things. This is a kind of foundational concept that we use. The two things that your brain needs to stay alive: fuel, really good fuel, and activation. So fuel is pretty obvious. We need oxygen, we need glucose, we need light, we need carbon dioxide as well. We need balance of things. So if you have clients that are lousy breathers, if you have clients that have poor diets, obviously it's harder to make them respond. Very often we think about that more physiologically in terms of what's happening at the muscular level. From our perspective, bad fueling means bad brains. Bad brains mean bad movement. Bad movement means lousy results from exercise. So in your toolbox, you need to be able to look at breathing. You need to be able to look at food. And when you're talking about food, you're also talking about behavior, which means you need in your toolbox the ability to convince people or help them convince themselves through good interviewing techniques to make small habit changes. So all that stuff's wrapped up literally just in fuel. Then when we get a little deeper into neuroscience, we have activation. Now the brain, very simply put, is a use it or lose it organ, which means that if I have an area of the brain that I do not stimulate enough, over time it will begin to deteriorate in some way, or the area that's not being used for its intended purpose, that area will usually be taken over by surrounding areas of the brain. In both instances, that can be bad. It's not always, but it can be. Now, what we're going to get really interested in are a couple different portions of the brain with regards to strength training, and particularly this idea of does unilateral versus bilateral matter? So stick with me. Again, we're about to jump into a little heavier neuro stuff, but I'm going to make it super simple and practical for you. So movement neuroanatomy 101. What parts of the brain are we interested in when it comes to doing a better bench press, doing a better squat? Really 3 parts. Number 1, we're interested in the cerebellum, this guy right back here. Cerebellum is incredibly important. It used to be one of those areas of the brain people are like, it's not that big a deal. As our technology has improved, we've realized the cerebellum is integral to being a better athlete. If you look at this, it says the cerebellum coordinates and fixes movement errors. It does a lot of things. It takes in input from the eyes, from the inner ear, from the rest of the body, from your thinking and movement planning. It does a lot of different things. But at its most basic level, we're going to think of it as a driver of movement control, a driver of movement coordination, and fixing errors on the fly. Then we have the frontal lobe, this guy up here. Frontal lobe is of great interest to people across the neuroscience world from a thinking perspective, because the prefrontal cortex is this part of the brain that we really think about as the human part. It allows us to do what's called executive decision making and all these kind of cool things. What most people don't think about in that context is that voluntary movement is also initiated in the frontal lobe. So whenever we go, hey, press this heavier bell, the command begins in the frontal lobe. So we have to have a healthy frontal lobe. And then finally, we have this thing, and I'm going to say it once, and then I'm going to use the acronym for the rest of the time. It's called the pontomedullary reticular formation. And that is, reticular basically means web-like. And this is an area, in essence, in the brainstem. And it's a loose collection of nuclei that do a lot of different things. But as you can read over here, this guy is intimately involved in the reflexive control of posture, of autonomics, okay, blood flow, blood pressure, muscular tone. So there's a lot of different things that the PMRF is involved with. And so what we're going to do now is we're going to start to look at the loops that occur in the human body. And over time, I believe this will help you understand exactly why unilateral versus bilateral decision making literally may be the most important thing that you do, especially when you start working with a client. So this is just a quick slide on the cerebellum. As we go a little further, after we've gotten through the main presentation, I do want to talk a little bit about numbers 2 and 3. But whenever we look at the cerebellum, it's also involved in your balance system. So if people have had head traumas and other things, what we're talking about in this program may be even more important to understand. Okay? Now, PMRF. Let's talk about this. I actually have kind of a cool little picture here for you. And in essence, here's how it works. All right? So this is the cortex. And the cortex is sending information down to the rest of the body. All right? And that information that's coming out of the cortex is involved with all your voluntary movement, but it's also involving all the reflexive controls in your body. So when your cortex is sending signals, about 90% of the signals that pass down into the body go through these nuclei in the PMRF. And I'm going to just talk through all the stuff that this does. And this is where you want to write some stuff down, because I'm going to go now, we're really going to start getting into the practical ramifications of this. So number 1, when this part of the brainstem is working appropriately, it inhibits pain ipsilaterally. Ipsilaterally means same side. So you actually have 2 PMRFs. You have one on the left, one on the right. So if I have a client that comes in and complains of all left-sided pain, the very first thing that I think about is, I wonder if the left PMRF is dysfunctional. Because what's supposed to happen is if it's working well and they have issues on this left side, as long as they're not severe, the brain's supposed to inhibit those signals. That's what the PMRF does. So all one-sided pain, think PMRF on that side. All right, left-sided pain, left PMRF. All right-sided pain, right PMRF. Practical element number 1. Number 2, sympathetics. If you are a very detailed trainer and you spend time actually, hey, you know what, I'm going to take your blood pressure, I'm going to check your perfusion index, I'm going to look at your oxygen saturation. Very, very simple stuff to do. What you'll often see as well is if there's a PMRF dysfunction, you'll see differences side to side. You may have high blood pressure on the right or higher blood pressure on the right than the left. So again, we're not going to talk a lot about the autonomics in this particular presentation because I'm trying to keep it super practical, but I want you to realize that these are involved together. Next is posture. All right, posture is a huge deal in the fitness industry, and whether your beliefs are posture matters a ton or posture doesn't matter, what I can tell you is that people look better when they have better posture. And most of the people that we're seeing want to look better. So when we go through kind of traditional education, we do a lot of stretch and strengthening protocols to try to improve posture. And if you've done that with a lot of people, you realize that most of the time it doesn't work. And we blame it on habit. We blame it on the fact they don't do their exercises. What most of us were never taught is that posture is supposed to be primarily reflexively controlled, and it's the PMRF that does that. All right? When it's working well, it brings the shoulders and back into line, and it actually lines the feet up so that we have a fairly comfortable, good postural neutral stance. That's what its job is. So your clients with lousy posture, you're automatically thinking about PMRF. Finally, muscle tone. When you have clients that have significant differences in muscle tone, that also can be indicative of a PMRF problem. And in essence, whenever the PMRF is doing its job, muscle tone is good. When it's not doing its job, muscle tone drops. So that's often also why people have all single-sided complaint. They've had ankle sprains on the left, and a medial collateral on the left, and disc on the left, etc., because the muscle tone has not been sufficient to keep control of the joints. So hopefully you're getting the picture. This is kind of a big deal. It's kind of a big area that we want to pay attention to. Still with me, I hope. We are going to get to the practical stuff here in just a second. All right. The last thing I want to talk to you about, and again, this is stuff that you're going to need to remember. We're going to give you the PDF of this presentation so you can go back and reference it. But we want to look at now kind of the pathways that information flows into the brain. Because remember we said the brain's a use it or lose it organ. So to some degree, as a movement professional or an exercise professional, we have to understand the flow of information from the body to the brain and from the brain to the body if we really want to understand what we're doing to people. Because remember, the exercise choice has ramifications. We have to know what we're doing and what we're creating in the body. So this is a simplified diagram. Trust me, it's ultra simplified because it's way more complex than this. But it's a useful diagram because it helps us start to understand basic information flows in the human body. So here's what I'm going to have you do. Just walk through this with me. If you take your left hand out in front of you and you start to do something like this, just make a figure 8 with your hand. What you're doing is you're stimulating receptors on the left side. So mechanoreceptors are sending information, movement nerve endings are sending information through the peripheral nerves into the spinal cord, and then that information is actually going to your left cerebellum. All right? So remember the cerebellum in the back of the brain that coordinates movement. It has a right side and a left side. So when I move my left hand, the signals go into my left cerebellum and activate it. All right? So left receptor input activates the left cerebellum. Now, interestingly enough, the left cerebellum then sends its signals across the brain to the right cortex. All right? And the right cortex is all this cool stuff that we were talking about, the frontal lobe, the parietal lobe, etc. So now, if we're following our flow chart, I move my left hand, that activates my left cerebellum. My left cerebellum is going to activate my right cortex. Then from there, the right cortex is going to fire down. Sensitive board. The right cortex is going to fire down into the right side PMRF. And remember, we were talking about the PMRF in terms of inhibiting pain, improving muscle tone, taking care of the autonomics, helping posture. Okay, now, here's what I want you to think about. All right, because there are big ramifications to this. If I have a client that comes in and I'm starting to work with them and I notice that they have really poor shoulder motion on the right, okay, meaning that shoulder's hanging down, lousy muscle tone, and it's painful a little bit. They're like, internal rotation is always difficult for me. And yeah, if I'm going to have a shoulder issue, it's always my right side. The typical thinking in the fitness industry is, well, we need to compare the muscle strength on the right to the muscle strength on the left. We need to compare the flexibility on the right to the flexibility on the left. And we need to work the heck out of the right side in order to bring it up to par with the left side. We need to enforce symmetry. Now, if there's a biomechanical issue, that might make sense. However, when you look at this neurologically, you may be doing exactly the wrong thing. This is why, again, there are ramifications to the exercises that we choose. I've seen so many people go through rehab protocols for shoulders and knees and hips with an intense focus on that area, whose pain continues and continues and continues, and it lasts. And they're like 2 years and 5 years later, and it's like, no, it's never been the same. Ever since I had that injury. I went through, I did all the rehab, I worked at it really hard. What, again, most people don't realize is this. If I have a right shoulder loss of tone, right shoulder pain, poor coordination, whatever it is my right cortex that's going to be sending signals that are going to take care of a lot of that reflexively. So if I have this right side issue and I have a right side PMRF issue, I actually should be doing more left side work in order to fire up the right cortex, to fire up the right PMRF, to make this area work better. Now, there's one other major factor you need to understand in this. And this comes from stroke research. It's not really been looked at that much in exercise yet because, again, we are emerging neuroscience. We're learning so much, but we don't have everything detailed yet. But what we see, particularly in brain injury research, is this. If I say I have a right cortex, right, and it's doing its job normally, and then I have a brain injury on the right side. And so now the work that my right side was supposed to be doing, it can't do because of the injury. The left side of the brain will begin taking over those activities, which is a really good thing. But here's the rub in all that. Because your brain has a very short-term survival perspective, what it will do, the left side, the currently healthy left side, will begin taking over the activities of the right side, and in the process, it will send ongoing inhibitory signals to the injured area. So in essence, the strong will make the weak weaker over and over and over. Now, if you think about that in context, we go back to our person with the shoulder issue, and we bring them in. If we think this through, all right, if we think it through, we are thinking that their right cortex is not stimulating their right PMRF, right? Because they have loss of muscle tone, they have chronic pain, etc. And they've not been able to get rid of it. And they've been doing all the right side exercises. When I exercise my right side, what you should see is that's the wrong pathway. If I move my right arm a lot, I'm working my right shoulder, I'm firing up my right cerebellum, which is firing up my left cortex, which is going to fire up my left PMRF, which is probably already trying to take over the job of the inhibited right side. This is why so often the single focus on an injured area or an area that we're needing to bring up fails. It's about neurology, not biomechanics. So, again, hopefully, as I've discussed this so far, you can start to now correlate the idea that, hey, if I'm looking for the minimal effective dose for my athlete, I need to actually look at how the exercises I'm choosing are impacting on their brain function. Because what's happening in their brain ultimately is going to tell the rest of the body what to do. So whenever we, again, teach this stuff, it can sound almost heretical, like, oh my gosh, you're against bilateral training or symmetry training? No. But I am against it done at the wrong time in a training progression. Because depending on what's happening, again, with your athletes, imagine that you're training a youth soccer player. They're coming into you to get stronger. They go out, they go head-to-head with an opponent in a game. They don't really have a concussion, but they had some head trauma. Could that be enough to begin altering this function? The answer is absolutely. So you have to, again, put all this in context to go, hey, this kid was responding awesome to squats and deadlifts, and he was getting stronger. And then, you know what? 2 weeks ago, he was in a game, and then nothing's been the same since. His deadlifts aren't as good. He's got this kind of weird movement pattern. At that point, you may need to take a step back and go, do we need to do some unilateral work to make him get better? All right. So hopefully you're with me so far. So let me tell you how we're going to do this. We're going to get really practical now. If you haven't taken any notes yet, this might be the time to get out a piece of paper because we're going to do this very, very simply. First thing that we're going to do with our clients is we're going to do a quick cerebellar screen. All right, the cerebellum, as I said, deals with coordination of movements. And remember, if I move my right side, I'm testing, in essence, the right cerebellum. I'm going to show you an upper body test and a lower body test. The reason that we do that is that when people walk in the door, it sometimes is super useful and time-saving to know if a cerebellum is a problem. Because if we go back one step here, and I can easily go, hey, how are your cerebelli, how are your two sides of your cerebellum working? And I can automatically see that there's a problem on the right through a quick test. That may lead me to very quickly being able to decide, hey, unilateral work may be what we need to focus on. All right, so That's why. So we're going to do a quick cerebellar screen, and then we're going to do some other assessments. Now, one of the things that sets Z-Health apart to some degree from other training session systems is we have an intense focus on chronic, constant reassessment intra-session. So that means that we don't actually start at week 1 and reassess you when you hit week 12. Because we realize that we only have usually 2 to 3 hours per week, 3 hours out of 168, to change a client's movement. Because movement ultimately is going to be the determinant of, are they going to get stronger long term? Are they going to get healthier long term? And so what we focus on is, hey, are the exercises that we're choosing in any given session improving their movement? Is it improving their function? Because neurologically, it should do so right now, particularly with a typical gym client. If you're working with a top 1% athlete in the world, you have more factors to take into consideration. But the average client that we're working with, our total focus should be every exercise improving them throughout the training session so that they're moving better when they leave than when they walked in. And from a neural perspective, that's awesome because what we've learned over time is that neurology changes like this. If I do a great drill for you, your body should improve, and that should be observable to us both. So what we typically do with our clients is we choose one of 4 different assessments. Now, in our education programs, we show you a lot of ways to assess people that does not involve the client wanting to get better. We do a lot of gait assessment and other things. But again, trying to keep this super easy and practical, I'm going to show you the stuff that we do with clients all the time. So we will often have them test ranges of motion, shoulder flexion, abduction, rotations, toe touches, things like that. We do drills and exercises, and then we retest those immediately. Exercises that make brains happier usually improve range of motion. Exercises that make brains unhappy decrease range of motion. It's a super simple concept. You can do the same thing with strength. So if you have one movement that your athlete really wants to work on, let's say it's a kettlebell overhead press, you can have them begin the training session after a warm-up. Say, all right, let's go ahead and press that working weight for you. Give me an RPE. RPE stands for rate of perceived exertion. So what is it on a scale of 1 to 10? It's about a 6. Awesome. Good drills will make that 6 go down to maybe a 2 or 3. Bad drills will make that 6 go up to an 8 or 9. Simple idea. Balance. If you have older clients, one of the things that we hear all the time from older clients, I'm scared of falling. My balance is not as good as it used to be. So balance can be a great intra-session assessment. I'll take you through how to do that. Or functional activities. What functional activities, I mean this. It could be a sports skill or an activity of daily living. So if I've got a golfer, one of the things I may have them do in the beginning of a session is swing a golf club a few times. We listen to the fluidity, we listen to the club head speed, whatever it is. So it can be a sports skill, or let's say it's an elderly client who has trouble getting up and down out of a chair. Very easy. Do a drill. Is it easier to get up and down out of the chair? Very, very simple stuff. So remember, cerebellum first, and then I'm going to show you how to begin utilizing these intra-session assessments to get an idea of how your client's responding, how their brain is responding to the stimulus. All right, so we're going to start off with a cerebellar test. Sam's going to be working with me today so you guys get an idea of how this actually applies in the real world. And so let's say Sam's my client and he's come in. We're going to do a little work together today. He's here for a training session. The first thing I'm going to look at is say, hey man, how's your cerebellum functioning? And he's going to look at me and go, I have no idea what you're talking about. So we have to do a little test. So with the upper body, the test in neurology is actually for something called dysdiadochokinesia. I only say that because I really like the word. Basically, it's rapid alternating pronation supination. So the way that we're going to test this with him is he's going to take his arms to 90 degrees and he's going to begin in pronation. So he's patting the dog so his palms are down. And then he's going to turn up into supination. Now, as the coach, what I would do, turn and face me a little bit. Let's be on the 45 here. I would watch him from right in front, and I'm going to say, I want you to go as fast as you can, just turning the hands back and forth. And I normally have them keep their fingers together, so everything together, and go for it. And what I'm looking for is if one side tires more quickly, or if it begins to do what we call flippering, where it's starting to get tired. Left side. Okay, so go ahead and shake that out. Most people should be fairly good at this. They're not going to be awesome, to be honest, because a lot of people have these issues that we're talking about, which is why probably 48% of people get hurt, or 42% of people get hurt exercising. I'm going to have you do that facing the camera so that you can see it. So when you're ready, just as fast as you can go. And you can see they're starting to get unrhythmic a little bit, and this one's getting really uncoordinated comparatively. Now, most people will also be able to identify it because that side will get tight and it will get kind of uncomfortable. So already, I think we've got some asymmetry in his cerebellar function. Left side seems a little less active or a little less capable of creating coordination than the right side. Now, the next one that I do is for the lower body, because sometimes you'll see some weird stuff like you have a problem on the upper body on the left, problem on the lower body on the right, which in all of our basic neurologic loop diagram doesn't make sense. There are other loops that will make more sense of that. But we're going to go ahead and test upper and lower and see if it's similar. So for the lower body test, it's super simple. It's just toe tapping. So I'm going to have him stand. He's going to put one foot directly in front of the other, just a little bit, and then he's going to try to create a nice tapping rhythm. So we'll do that for maybe 5 to 10 seconds on the right, and then 5 to 10 seconds on the left. And again, we're looking at good coordination. All right, whenever you're ready. Good. Now, if you can actually hear this, he's getting better now, starting to smooth out. Go ahead and relax. All right, how'd that feel? All right, okay, let's see what happens with the left. Good. And good. So slower on the left. Once you noticed on the left side, he kind of figured out a rhythm. Trying to go fast wasn't going to happen. Do you feel like you could go faster on the right than the left? Yeah. So from my perspective, the feet were much more similar. He had kind of similar coordination issues, but the left side overall was a little slower. So right now I'm thinking left upper, left lower, all that's telling me maybe left cerebellum. Okay? Now, how this is going to play out is now that I have an idea of that, I now want to take him through our basic, again, other assessments. So what I typically like to do, especially working with him, because it's pretty observable, is range of motion testing. So we're going to test his range of motion. So let's go through shoulder flexion. So thumb on top, elbow locked, straight up as high as you comfortably can. Good. And I usually have my clients do 3 or 4 reps. And if you're doing this with a client, they're not going to notice a change sometimes, so you may have to take pictures of it so they can feel the difference. Try the left side. Keep that elbow locked. Good. Awesome. And let's check abduction now. So he's going to come up and out. Good. Good. So he's keeping the elbow nice and locked. That's great. And he's basically getting very close shoulder to ear or arm to ear. And you're a little tighter on this side, yeah? Okay, so you can see there's some difficulty there. Let's go ahead and look at internal rotation. So I do a scarecrow test. So go ahead and drop the right arm in internal rotation. Good. Come up out of that. Left arm into internal. Okay, back up. Right arm. So right arm is actually a little tighter in internal rotation. So we've tested abduction, flexion, internal rotation. Now let's test a big body rotation. Now normally with this one, what we have people do, we're going to have him stand on a line in the, so put his toes on a line in our mat and join the hands together, and he's just going to do a full body rotation. We let their knees move. The only thing that we don't let them do in this test is let the foot come off the ground. And just do 4 or 5 of those. As he's doing this, he is identifying how far his whole body can turn. All right, just let everything relax and turn as far as you can. Good. All right, everything feeling pretty warmed up? So that's basic range of motion testing. As I mentioned with strength testing, it would just be an RPE. We're not going to do that one right now. Third one is single leg balance. So I'm going to have him take one step back. We're just going to test his balance. Now, the way that we're going to do this is he's going to put one leg in front of him, and I'm going to let him do it eyes open, so just look at the camera. And 15 seconds, and what I'm observing and what he's observing is how difficult is this to hold. Right now, he's pretty stable. The ankle is not wobbling back and forth. It is a little bit. Okay. That looks pretty good. Go ahead and switch to the other side. This is our first screen. If they're incapable of standing on one foot safely, then you need to be close to them. And you can just try a harder stance for them, like feet together. We have a whole product called the Balance Gym that deals with all these different progressions. All right, so he's actually pretty good with eyes open. Go ahead and come back to the other foot. So I would not actually use eyes open balance testing with him as a useful tool because it would take too long. All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to make it harder. We're going to have him stand on his left leg, or right leg, whichever one it was. And he's going to close his eyes. And you can see we're getting a lot more wobble. And again, this is something that I'm trying to identify. He's at about 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, okay? So he did well with that, but you can see it was a lot harder. You got an idea of what's happening with the wobble. We'll go to the left side when you're ready. Good. Got a little different strategy on this side. He's kind of got the semi-squat going on. All right, awesome. So with this particular client, I would say, hey, we're going to use range of motion testing and probably eyes closed testing on that right foot because there was a lot of wobble. It was hard for him to actually hold balance. So our last one, as I said, would be a functional activity. Since we're not testing any sports stuff right now, but in general, as I said, if he wanted to, he's doing some kettlebell work right now. If he wanted to test kettlebell snatch, that could be his test, just looking at how smooth is it, how good is the technique, etc. So remember, the idea here is these are all intra-session assessments. Now, we're going to put it all together. I'm going to put a chart up here. And this is going to describe kind of the process or protocol. And then we're going to actually take him through the initial phase of determining unilateral versus bilateral. So assessment number 1 is the cerebellum. Assessment number 2 is the stuff that we just did, testing range of motion, strength, balance, whatever. Now, here's where it gets really interesting and really simple because I'm going to give you a chart. Let's say Sam's come in as my client today and I'm trying to figure out, hey, you know what? I had programmed for you that today was leg day. And we've been doing a lot of squatting and deadlifting. Both of those are bilateral activities. Based on everything that we've been talking about, hopefully you can see that if he's got cerebellar issues or brain issues, that a bilaterally weighted exercise, a squat, a clean, snatch, deadlift, whatever, may actually not only not be good for him, but could cause him additional problems rather than fixing problems, which is not what people pay me for. So what we have to figure out is, hey man, is your brain going to respond better to bilateral or unilateral today? Once we figure that out, it's very easy for us to go forward. So it's the way this is going to work is we're going to actually go through a vertical push, a pull, horizontal push, horizontal pull, squat pattern, lunge pattern. And we're going to do bilateral, we're going to do right side, left side, and then we're going to do a little addition to it based on how the cerebellum works that I'll show you here in just a second. We're going to do 1 or 2 reps, and then we're going to reassess whatever it is that we were testing. So in his case, we're going to look at probably, just to keep this simple, right shoulder internal rotation, full body rotations, or that single leg balance. A good drill, one that makes his brain happier, one that will give good ramifications rather than bad ramifications, should improve his range of motion, improve his range of motion, improve his balance. Does that make sense to you guys? That's how this whole process works. So here is the chart. Hopefully, once you've gone through this a couple of times and you understand the process, this chart will save you enormous amounts of time. It will also save your clients enormous amounts of pain. As a result, it should help you keep your clients and help you make more money. It's a really important chart. All right? So here's how it works. Person comes in, I test cerebellum. Upper, cerebellum, lower. Remember, for the upper, we did wraps. For the lower, we did foot tapping. So he had some asymmetry in the upper, so I'm going to circle that. And I personally circle the side that wasn't so awesome, was the left side. Over here, lower, also some asymmetry, also left side. So I'm already wondering, based on this, how he's going to do with bilateral work. My guess is that bilateral work's not going to be awesome for him. Now, the cool thing is human brains are very smart and very adaptable, so I don't know that, though. I've done an initial screen. My guess is that bilateral is going to be a problem, but we're going to test that. And as you can see, what we're going to do is we're going to use this chart. So we're going to do, again, 1 to 2 reps, reassess. And based off what I see, I'm going to put in a negative sign, a plus sign, or a double plus for what was the best. Cool. Now that I've talked it to death, let's actually do it so we get an idea of how this whole thing works. So, sir, how you feeling?
Good.
Do you feel like you could start off with some vertical pushes, bilateral?
Yes.
Okay, so let's do a quick screen again. Show me your rotation and that internal rotation of the shoulder. Yeah. So start up here, scarecrow for me, right side. All right, that's pretty fixed in that position. Okay. Show me left side. Good. Back down. Arms down. And show me abduction on the left. That was tight as well. Okay, cool. And show us your rotations. As you're watching, notice how far he can rotate. Normally, whenever we work with clients regularly, we're looking to see he's a lot tighter to the right, from what I can tell. It's almost falling over. All right. Go ahead and grab a couple of bells. So what I'm going to have him do, since he's doing some kettlebell work, I'm going to have him go ahead and rack these kettlebells, and he's going to just do 1 rep, boom, of a bilateral overhead press. All right. So this is going to be our vertical push. All right. So whenever you're ready. Good stance. All right, nice and tall. So it's got to be one good rep. And press. Good. Rack them. Set them down. Awesome. Okay. So we did 1 rep, and now we're going to retest. So let's go ahead and look at that left shoulder abduction. Actually, let's do abduction first. Okay. That was actually a little better. Let's look at your scarecrow. Show me internal rotation. Okay. So still no change over here. And show us your full body rotation. Get him back on his line so we know where we're at. Okay, do that again. A little better, I'd say. Maybe just some action, some motion helped. However, that right internal rotation was still not good. All right, so there was no change there. So a little better rotation, abduction was a little better, internal rotation, no change. So from my perspective, I'm looking for a win across the board. All right, we could also test his balance. So the vertical push right now, bilateral, I'm actually going to put as a negative. Because I didn't see improvement all the way across the board, and it wasn't really super awesome. So now I can just simply start to work through my chart. Now, if you guys think about this, remember we said we think he's got a left cerebellum problem. And if we think about that, left arm goes to left cerebellum, goes to right PMRF issue, it could be that he's going to respond really well to left side work. I don't know, but we're going to go ahead and test it. So let's have you actually let's press the left side first. All right, so he's just going to do a vertical push with the left side. Go ahead and bring the feet together, get a good stance. Give me 2 reps. Good. That elbow lock, lengthen the spine. Beautiful. And rack it and set it down. All right. Going to shake out any tension from that. Awesome. And let's go ahead and check abduction on the left. Boom. How's that feel? Good. Better? Yeah. Okay. Let's go to scarecrows. All right. Show me that right side again. Okay. So that's better. Again, I don't know if you guys can tell because of the angle, but probably 3 degrees improvement or 5 degrees improvement. Did that feel looser to you? Yeah. All right. And let's look at the full body rotation. Good. Again, better or looser? Yeah. All right. Definitely better to the right. Okay, now, so we would say that was his left side. That was a nice response. All right, positive response across the board. Everything improved. Let's go now to the, right. Yeah, that other side, the right side. Whichever side you didn't do. Remember, guys, we're doing 2 reps here. It does not have to be even that heavy. It doesn't have to be a super heavy weight. A working weight or even less gives us a good test. All right. Okay, that was kind of weird motion. Did that feel strange to you? Yeah. Okay. And go ahead and go back to scarecrows. Show the right side again. Yeah, tightened up again. You can actually see the shoulder elevating as he's coming forward. Feel the difference? Try your rotations again. Tighter, definitely tighter. Okay, so bilateral wasn't good, left side wasn't good. Bilateral wasn't good, right side wasn't good, left side was good, which is pretty much what I would expect based on the initial cerebellar screen. Now, this last one over here is called unilateral with rotation. I do lots of exercises with clients where we're working on rotating motions because the cerebellum actually likes rotation. Remember, it's designed to fix and coordinate movement patterns, and so straight linear patterns actually don't activate it as much as stuff with rotation. Now, kettlebells, by their very nature, tend to be rotational in the execution of the exercise. What I'm going to have him do now is I'm going to have him do that same vertical push, Once you rack it, as you're pressing up, actually focus a little bit more on the rotational component and see how that feels. Okay. We'll retest this. Okay. Left side. Good. That's enough. That's one. That's a heavy weight to add that additional rotation to. How'd that feel? Good. All right. So start off with your full body rotation for me. Boom. Good. All right. Check your shoulder internal rotation, scarecrows. Good. Better again. All right. And we can test abduction. Now, let's actually go take one step back. Let's test his balance now. All right. Remember, we did one rep only, and we're seeing significant changes in range of motion and movement quality. Let's test the balance. So right side, when you're ready, eyes closed. And I think you can see, took a second for his brain to kick in, but then he got a lot more stable than when he started. Feel better as well? Yeah. Okay. So up here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put another plus sign. Because at this point, I don't yet know, because we haven't tested all the different movement patterns, what his best response is going to be. All right? And this is taking a long time, obviously, because we're talking it through. Once you have this pattern down, this usually will take maybe 30 to 45 seconds, maybe a minute and a half, to go through vertical, right, left, and with rotation. So we're going to go ahead and keep going because in any given training session, any given day, I may have been planning today's a vertical push day, and I may discover that one of the other movements is actually what their brain is responding best to. So we have to go through this process to help him make some good selections. All right, you ready to keep going? Yep. All right, so now vertical pull. We're going to just do all band stuff for this because it's easier than racking the bars, etc. So he's going to start off with a vertical pull. So here, let's just get into kind of a bent over. He's going to kind of emulate a pull-up for us here. All right, let's go palms down if you can, and think long spine, drawing the elbows down toward the ribs. So good, vertical pull. 2, good, stop. All right. And he can just turn around. We'll do a quick, let's just go now to scarecrows. All right, now interestingly enough, go to your right arm again. How's that feel? A little tighter again? Okay. Show us your rotation, full body rotation. Way tighter. Okay. So what are we going to say about vertical pull, bilateral? Negative. All right, let's try a right side or left side. If we're thinking about the cerebellum, we think the left side's probably going to be the one that we want to focus on. Let's go ahead and try right again. See what happens. Nice long spine. Okay, good. 2 reps. You don't have to walk back up. Well, go ahead and go to your line. Go to your line, boy. Okay, all right. Enough. I already know that that didn't work. Left side. And you can see this gets faster and faster. I don't often do multiple assessments. I usually pick one spot. Okay. Long spine. Pull down toward the ribs. Good. Enough. All right. Retest. Okay, really good rotation, and awesome. Better internal rotation, correct? Okay, so right was not good, left was good. So now he's going to do one more vertical pull, only this time as he's pulling the band, he's going to try to rotate a little bit more. Left side? Yep, left side only. Nice and tall. And you're going to rotate toward a, yeah, good. One more. Beautiful, done. Assess. Good. Better. Best. All right. So that's the best internal rotation we've seen so far out of the right, out of the right arm. So again, hopefully this loop is making sense to you. You can see the pattern that we're going to work through. Horizontal push, horizontal pull, squat pattern, lunge pattern. You want to keep going? All right, so go ahead and let's do a horizontal push test real fast. So he's going to take 2 bands. At this point, we kind of already know that bilateral is not working. In a real practical gym setting, I may not go through this whole sequence where I go, okay, bilateral hasn't worked so far, but there are times when it will show up. So go ahead and give us 2 pushes. 1, yeah, just 2, enough. Enough. Come back. Broken. All right, just go to your left side. I think everyone's starting to get the point here. Let's see what happens with a good left horizontal push. Good. Just like that. Because the brain's changing automatically, 1 to 2 reps is sufficient. All right, awesome. Show us that shoulder. Okay. Now, we want to do a little rotation, so let's go ahead and go back. So left side, again, we got a better response. So actually, I want you to set like this so that you can actually punch a little bit through it. More rotate. There you go. A little more rotation. Awesome. Okay. See where you're at. Wow. Okay. That's by far the best that we've seen so far. So horizontal push. I'm going to go ahead and put a double. Show us your internal rotation. Okay. Yeah. Cleanest motion. Best range of motion. How'd that feel?
Felt really good.
Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and put a double cross on that one. And I'll explain why as we go forward. All right, you want to try horizontal pull? We're going to go ahead and skip past bilaterals now. Let's just see what happens with a unilateral on the left. Horizontal. Use that one there. Okay, so we're just going to do a straight horizontal, and then we're going to do a horizontal with a rotation. 1, 2, awesome. Go ahead and retest that. And you can see he's actually, he's working up a little bit of a sweat. Okay, not as good. Particularly rotation wasn't as good. So now we'll go back to that horizontal pull. He's going to try and rotate to a palm up position as he does it. Nice long spine. Okay. Enough. Awesome. Once again, ooh, awesome. All right. So that was a horizontal pull, left side with rotation. Just denote here, left and left as well. Okay. So far, we've got 2 exercises, horizontal push, horizontal pull, and hopefully you guys have noticed that they were better overall for the body than the pushes. So vertical push, vertical pull, not as good as horizontal push, horizontal pull. We have 2 more patterns to test today. Squat pattern, lunge pattern. So what we're going to have him do is I'm going to have him do a little goblet squat. So just a basic goblet squat with a kettlebell. So this is going to be our squat pattern bilateral. We'll see what we get with this. Okay, nice tall spine, lengthen up. When you're ready, he's just going to give us 2 reps. Good. Set it down. And go ahead and retest. Nope. All right, definitely a negative on bilateral squat pattern. So what we're going to have him do now is we're going to actually have him do kind of a unilateral squat pattern, but we want to make it doable. So I'm not going to have him do a pistol, but I am going to have him take his legs, come in, be up on the ball of 1 foot, and do in essence, single leg squat. Okay, so let's try it not with a bell.
Okay.
So just right side only.
Right side.
Yeah, let's start with the right. Okay, 2 reps. Awesome, come back up. Okay, a little better than bilateral, not as good as the horizontals. Go ahead and test your arm. Okay. So these are okay, but again, rotation wasn't awesome. Test your left side now. Good. Very good. All right. So left side was awesome, comparatively. So we're on our squat pattern. I can go to the left. That was a negative. Now, what we're going to do now, remember with this one, we want to add a little rotation to it. So what you're going to do this time is you squat down, reach across your body with your right hand. Okay, try that. Just even when you get down there, get down and then rotate. Good, do that for me one more time. Nice and tall through the spine. Awesome. All right, test that. How'd that feel? Better?
Yeah.
Okay, that was fairly comparable to just the left side. Now that's a little bit more difficult pattern, so it may just be that. All right. So right now, I still think horizontal push, horizontal pull with rotations are the best exercises that we've seen. So last thing we're going to test then is the lunge pattern. You doing all right? So obviously with a lunge, this isn't a bilateral pattern, so this one doesn't matter. So what we're going to do is simply have him do a nice anterior 45 lunge, nice tall spine. Left side first. Let's see what happens. Okay, come back up, stay nice and tall the whole time. Good, do one more. Okay, retest. Nope. Okay, right side lunge. Good, retest. And those are both definite no's, all right? So kind of across the board here, we could go ahead and test a rotational pattern with a lunge, which would be left side and in this position, reaching toward the ground. So left lunge, reach across with the right. Good. Stay tall. Go ahead and test. So a little better result from that than any of the other lunges. So that could be a positive. Try it on the right side.
The rotation?
The rotation, yeah. All right, reach across. Good, retest. And, okay. So that was a positive on the left. And this was also unilateral rotation left. Okay. We just skipped over those because we pretty much knew what we were getting. How you feeling?
Good.
All right, so long process, but in general, as I said, once you learn this pattern and once you teach it to your clients, you can normally knock this out in 7 to 8 minutes or less because it does not take that long. It's literally 1 rep or 2 reps of 24 different patterns or 23 different patterns because of the lunge. Now, what you got out of this are the 2 exercises right here that he responded the absolute best to. Whenever I'm programming or working with clients, I very often will go through this pattern and go, these are the only 2 exercises that we're going to focus on today. And then we work on volume and intensity changes throughout that. Now, obviously, I could, depending on whether they're bored, whatever, I can choose anything that has a positive sign around it. But what you guys see is particularly for him right now, he got the very best results for his body, for his general movement, by doing horizontal pushes and pulls only on the left side with rotation patterns added to them. Most people in the fitness industry would look at this and go, seriously? Like you would train him just doing that for an entire session? Yes. The answer is yes. Because of all the stuff that we've talked about already. So let's actually, now that you've kind of cooled down for a second, show us your ranges of motion. Okay. So on the whole, just from the testing, he's better than when we started. And that's probably partially because he's warmed up, but really also because of the information that his brain's been getting. Show us that abduction again. Okay. Pretty good. And step back and show us your eyes closed.
Right side?
Right side. Very good. Okay, so third time through this is getting better each time. What I'm going to have him do is we're going to now have him go ahead and try. Let's go ahead and do a horizontal push.
Okay.
So band, horizontal push. And remember, left side only. And remember, you're going to be here. You're going to be rotating. All right, nice and tall. And I want you to do a set of, let's say, 7. Yep. Is that too much? Okay. Stay tall. Don't let your spine collapse. Slow it down a little bit for me. Last one. And relax. Good. Okay. Shake that out. Let's now, because we've now loaded what we've got positives on, double positives, let's go ahead and retest everything. Good. Nice. How's that shoulder feel? Okay? So show me the internal rotation one more time. Good. Show me left side. Good. Now, it's actually not as good as the original test. So tightened up a little bit. So something in the exercise execution may have been off. That's what I was kind of seeing some stuff with the spine. Or, more possibly, we need to do the pull. All right, so let's try the pull. Surviving there, dude? Okay. So, nice and tall here. Lengthen up. There we go. So just in watching the exercise execution on this, what I'm seeing already, a lot better spinal stability. So I think there may have been a setup issue with that initial horizontal push. How's that feel? Feel pretty effortless? Okay, so just keep going. We're going to actually let him do a rep close to fatigue. So you start to tell me whenever it's starting to get tight, don't lose your position here, lengthen. You got about 500 more in you? Or 2? Good. Starting to get tired? All right. Can you give me 2 more? Nice and tall. Good. He did a good job keeping his face relaxed. All right, shake out any tension from that. And let's see what we got. Woo! Much better. Awesome. Good. How does that feel overall?
Really good.
Better than what we've done? Very strong, much better response. Now, the thing that you have to realize as you're going through all this stuff, like I said, is I'm trying to give you a pattern that helps you evaluate and understand why sometimes the stuff that we do with people doesn't work. What you saw in his case is that every single bilateral exercise we did today decreased his range of motion. If I were doing gait assessment, I can guarantee you it would have made his gait assessment worse because we've correlated this over thousands and thousands of client interactions. So if I love barbells, I love powerlifting, awesome. Be really good at it, but understand that particularly if you have a client that's had an injury, that has some kind of a health issue or something going on with the brain, that may not be the tool that they need that day to see a significant improvement. So remember, in your programming, one of the most important things that you can keep in mind is all this neurology that we've been talking about. As you understand neurology, you will make better, more precise exercise prescriptions. You know, we use that term all the time. And that's important because an exercise prescription recognizes that exercise is a drug, which means we have to give the right drug and the right dose to create the result that we want. Now, with all that said, I have some next steps for you, all right? Because there is a lot going on here. It's a lot to think about. But as you read through the PDF, here's what I want you to do. Number one, I know you've been listening for a long time, but as you start approaching this for yourself and your clients, please keep an open mind and recognize that you're performing a science experiment. You're trying to see, hey, does this actually work the way that was demoed in the video? I always tell people my favorite clients that we've ever had come through our whole educational system are the most skeptical ones. I love skeptics because ultimately you test it. Trust yourself to see what happens. So keep an open mind. Next, print the PDF. We're going to give you a couple links here. You need to print the PDF of the presentation because I assume that you're going to want to go back and revisit this and look at the loops and stuff that I showed you. Next, print the PDF of the testing sheet, the testing protocol. It's exactly what I just did with Sam, so we wanted to give you a copy of that. Depending on how you feel after watching all this, if you did kind of a follow along, it's probably already in your head, but you can review the video. Any spots that are a little bit weird for you, like, okay, what were the assessments, or what was the test for the cerebellum? How do I use the chart? Rewatch that stuff. Try one full training session on yourself first. Before you actually do this with any of your clients, I want you to feel it for yourself. One of the things that we tell people about Z-Health is having a personal experience with it is literally the very best way to go, oh, brains matter. So try it on yourself first. Next, though, I want you to start this week applying it with a client. So choose your favorite best client, best attitude, willing to do anything. We usually all have at least one of those in our quiver. So choose your best client and say, hey, this workout, this session, I want to try something maybe completely different. We're going to go through this and just assess the results. See how they're moving when they walk in. See how they feel at the training session. See how they are moving when they leave. Because remember, your goal as a health and movement professional is to improve movement. You only have a couple of hours. They have to leave moving better. Finally, you may have questions. And I understand that because this is kind of complicated stuff. But we make no apologies about that because really the health and fitness world is evolving and it has to. We have so much more information than we've ever had. We need to go, what are the actual practical ramifications of all the stuff we're learning about brains? This is exactly that. These are the practical ramifications that can really help people improve their lives. Now, I'm putting up one more chart before I close up because I want you to understand that you may go through that whole chart with people and it may be utterly confusing and not work out at all like I said it would. That's because it's one chart. It's one loop of a lot of different things going on in the human brain. So if you look at this, this is kind of similar to what we looked at before. But what it's also showing you are other areas of the brain that also impact that PMRF function. So if you have someone that you're working with and like nothing works the way that I said, it may be because their inner ear, their vestibular system is messed up. It may be because they have an issue in their midbrain, and that a lot of stuff happens with the midbrain with regards to how the eyes are working. So in our system, we teach about the visual system. We teach about the vestibular system. We talk about how all that interacts with movement in the brain, because once you start to understand that, you become really, really powerful at fixing a whole host of things that you're going to run into, but it all comes from understanding the basics of how the brain functions. So with that said, if you have issues that crop up, please feel free to contact us. That's our website. That's our phone number. Hopefully you found this super interesting, and as I said, hopefully it's also inspiring to you to realize that there's more out there. Most of us that are in the health and fitness industries have become frustrated over time with our clients, with the results. Not all of them, but a lot of them. You know, if we're really successful, we typically just wind up attracting people that respond well to our training. The Z-Health system is designed so that those non-responders, those 20% of people that have never responded well to exercise, we can figure out why. It's also designed so we can take that 68% of people who are normal responders. So that's a total of, whatever, 83% of people who are either normal or non. Our job, our belief in Z-Health is that our job is to take those people and turn them all into super responders by figuring out what's broken, what's not functioning well with their body, with their brain, and helping them correct it. And this particular training process is a huge step in that direction. So ultimately, the question was, does unilateral versus bilateral matter? For Sam, it mattered. For a lot of people, it matters. So hopefully you've learned a lot from this. Again, if you have questions, please contact us. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch.